Right, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is the Doodle Review coming through with a new episode of Chattin Fraff. Nathan is back. Nathan is back. He's joining me this week to talk about Spoon album Transference. It's one that we've mentioned a bunch over the past few episodes that he's been on, so it was good to just go and do a bit of a deep dive on that record that I think we both love. We love a lot. We also cover off some new releases. Obviously, this week's been great. We've had new stuff from Turnstile, new stuff from King Gizzard, new stuff from Mclusky. So that is all mentioned. I really hope you enjoy this episode. It was a lot of fun to do, as always. Always good to chat with Nathan. Before I let you go, I do think it's worth you knowing that I'm reviewing albums at the same rate that I always was. You're not seeing them on the channel because they do now live in a newsletter form. The newsletter goes out every Friday. It's filled with new album reviews, recommendations on what to listen to, shuffles through my library, the Doodle Jukebox. I think you should check it out. If you sign up today, I will send you a secret playlist, a private playlist, only for those newsletter subscribers, and I'll even send you a free print as well. So go ahead, check it out. The link is down below. And yeah, I'll see you in a minute. I did get to listen to the Mclusky track, but I didn't get a chance to like write my notes on it. So
Oh, that's fair. Did you like Mclusky? Like, are you familiar with Mclusky?
I know of their name, and so kind of what I tend to do is, because I'm always just forever listening to like new music that comes out, I'm
Mhm.
always making note of artists that are referenced, and then generally speaking, it's when they eventually get around to dropping something new that I'll end up checking them out. So I've known of Mclusky for a long time. I've known that they've been like quite a revered band, and then this will kind of be my first foray into it. But I liked the track. I liked what I heard of it. I wasn't sure what to expect from the band at all. Um, like their name, I thought was gonna be like either more punk or like noise rocky than maybe what they are, but also I'm going purely based off the strength of that one tune.
That's fair. What was it? People Person? Was that the one that you checked out, or
Literally the one they released most recently, which
I
is
think that one is People Person?
yeah, okay. Oh no, I thought no. Well, the one that I checked out is Chekhov's Guns.
Oh, that one. Yeah, literally just like maybe came out like 2 days ago or something. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
All the new singles I think are good. It just seemed like it would be something that's sort of like in your noise rock wheelhouse. Yeah,
100% is. Yeah, as soon as I heard it, I was like, okay, no, this is definitely in the vein of what I'm gonna like.
yeah. Cool. Well, I think if you do get a chance to sort of like delve into their back catalog, I think you'll find lots to enjoy. McCluskey Do Dallas, like that album is maybe one of the best like noise rock albums ever, maybe.
Wow. Big cool.
I think.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's been such a cool kind of journey to go on over the last like year or so. From like I'd always had like little pockets of the genre that I enjoyed, like Jesus Lizard, Bark
Mhm.
Market. But I would always talk about it. I kind of didn't have the vocabulary for it. I didn't realize that was kind of like this specific subcategory. So I was always looking at it from a lens of alternative, and then obviously the last year just kind of being educated and also feeling like the genre is having a little bit of a mini resurgence. Maybe not in any sort of mainstream conversation, but it feels like a lot of bands are coming back who made an impact in the genre. And then there's also you've got like Whores, you've got Piss Jeans, you've got Mets, like a few adjacent new bands, and it's kind of led to this the genre kind of picking up steam again.
Yeah, man, I love Piss Jeans. I think they're so fucking good.
Yeah. I love both jeans bands, Piss Jeans, Mean Jeans. I don't know
Yes,
if
yep.
they know of each other, but that would
They
just
should
be
run
a
a
really
tour
fun
together.
double header tour.
Totally.
I hit up whoever runs Piss Jeans social and was like, "Hey, I just had your like brother band on for an interview. You guys should come on." But I don't know if it went over well, so maybe that I might have closed that door.
Like you guys share a last name. Clearly you're like related, right?
100%, yeah. It's just funny because how opposite Mean Jeans are. They're this like power pop, pop punk, Ramones style. happy-go-lucky, uh, coming at it from a completely different direction. But both put out some of the best albums of last year, to my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that Mean Jeans album might have been, I mean, definitely top three albums for me last year.
Was I think if I was going by just replayability, I think I probably listened to it more than anything else, just because it's such a fun album to listen to. Um,
Yeah, I listened to it a lot at work. Yeah.
yeah, me too. Whenever I just like need to get somewhere quickly or just have fun, it's a good one to have a beer to, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a good kick.
It feels like if we were to do this on a recurring basis, this show, we would probably talk about this one every four shows. But King Gizzard have announced a new album that is dropping just next week, called Phantom Island. I know that you're quite down with the Giz, and I think you quite enjoyed Flight B7451, if I remember rightly. And I think this is a continuation of that, or in a slightly different direction or something.
Yeah, it seems like it's like a sort of a sister release, I guess. But they're backed by like an orchestra on this one. I think
Yeah.
sort of like Metallica S&M kind of like vibe, apparently. Um, they released the first single, Phantom Island, I feel like maybe like 6 months ago or so.
Yeah.
And,
I only
and
just listened
it's,
to it, but it's been out for ages.
yeah, yeah. And it's okay. I don't think it's an amazing song or anything. Um, I also, I mean, I did like Flight, whatever it is, Flight B421, whatever the hell it is. I can't remember what it's called. Uh, but I wouldn't put that in their upper echelon of albums. I think the last one that I was like really fully bought into was probably Mushrooms, Lava, et cetera, whatever that
Oh
album
yeah.
was. Yeah.
The mushrooms, lava, ice, and
But
something something.
yeah, I don't know. Get
Yeah.
get shorter titles, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I know, because I was about to say my most recent favorite one would be Petrodragonic. I remember that part, and then there's a whole other statement after that I don't remember. Um,
Yeah, and I think that one's okay, but it feels like a lesser version of Infest the Rat's Nest to me.
yeah,
Like I'd rather listen to Infest the Rat's Nest if I'm going for that vibe of Giz.
yeah, yeah. I would agree. I'd say that's the stronger of the two. I think it's interesting that where this one will kind of sit, if you like, in terms of flavors of King Gizzard, because I listened to it and I actually really like the orchestral element to it. I thought that's actually quite cool, quite novel for them, and just the general sound of it within that song. But then it kind of takes a turn in this particular track from that opening that feels like kind of them in their smooth jazz type vibe, and then it leans back into what I didn't like about the Flight B471, which is like bouncy rock band at a fairground kind
Yeah,
of
it's
vibe.
yeah, the vibe is very like sort of like B tier 70s like American bands. It
Yeah.
feels like like Little Feet and like Black Oak, Arkansas, and like those types of bands.
Okay. Those are deep references. I know Little Feet. I'd not heard of Black Arkansas.
Black Oak, Arkansas. What's the other one? The Ozark Mountain Daredevils. That's the one that it actually reminds me of the most.
Oh shit. Those are
Yeah,
some crazy names. I can only imagine the music that goes with it, but I don't know whether if it sounds anything like whatever, it might go to the back of my list. Just
yeah,
isn't the
yeah.
type of thing that the vibes for me.
I don't think they're bad bands or anything, but it's not really my vibe. It's kind of hillbilly rock and roll, kind of like it has like a lot of country sort of like twang to it, but it's not country rock. I don't know if there's a distinction to be made there, but
I think
or
for me,
if
it's like it's just too damn happy, which I think says more about me than anything. But like when something is like upbeat in and happy go lucky, I really struggle. I really struggle with it.
That's fair. You're not like a Monkeys fan or Herman's Hermits or
I mean, monkeys have their moments. This is the thing. It can work for me, but it has to be like excellent songwriting level stuff. Like the Beatles, for instance. They've got their fair share of that, but they're also the Beatles, so it's great. But when I'm like listening to like Stu and stuff from King Gizzard giving it all of the I'm a cheeky sneaky wizard or whatever I'm like, that's not quite. Oh, silly Billy, that's the lyric. I'm a silly Billy.
yeah, yeah.
Kind of.
I'm being a silly Billy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, oh, it makes me feel like I'm watching the Wiggles or something.
That's fair. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say that's my favorite lyrical turn of phrase in the King catalog. That's near the bottom for me.
Yeah, fair. It's a shame actually, because I think that song in particular actually is probably one of the better ones, but then it gets to that bit and I'm like, oh. Um, what would you say is your like favorite flavor of King Gizzard?
I like a lot of the microtonal stuff. Um, but I do think just overall, as an album experience, probably in Infest the Rat's Nest or Nanagon, Float Along, Fill Your Lungs, like the earlier sort of like hewing a little more OCZ kind of like sound. Um, but then again, I would in those cases, I'd generally just probably put on an OC's album.
Right. Yeah. I see what you mean. I think it's cool that they broke out of that because I think there was a particular time in whenever that was, early 2010s, when you had OCs, King Gizzard, Ty Segall, and they were all not that they were making individually bad records, but it was certainly all centering around a similar style. And then I think in the years after that, they kind of all broke away and found their thing. King Gizzard, they found their thing of like, we're just going to make every single other type of music that we possibly can. Uh,
Yeah, I really appreciate that they commit for like a whole album to like a sort of a conceptual idea. I think
yeah,
that is really great, and that's sort of like what separates them from their contemporaries.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, you get a lot of bands that are like, oh, this is our, you move into alt rock or whatever or garage rock, but they don't. They're kind of taking little bits, whereas the Giz are just like fully take a swing, for better or worse. I mean, I could do with less of personally, the less of the boogie woogie and less of the hip hop stuff, which again just
Mm.
doesn't feel. It's feels like Beastie Boys, but if it was via Sesame Street, on most of the time I hear it.
Yeah, I feel like there are people in their fan base who are like, we want a whole album of Giz rap, and I'm not one of those guys.
No,
You know,
no.
more
But
power to them.
exactly, I support their right to make whatever music they want to make.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, definitely. And speaking of new music, and I don't know, we've never really spoken about this band, so I don't know how much you're into them, but Turnstile also came back this week with a new track, Never Enough, from and I think an album of the same name. Have you heard it? Like, what are your Turnstile thoughts in general?
Yeah, I checked it out because it just came out this week, I believe, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, it's a little synth heavier than I expected. Like usually when they have sort of like these synthier tracks, the guitars come in heavier, I feel like in
Yep.
the past. Yeah. This is sort of like their smoothest sort of like song that I am familiar with, I guess. Like it feels like a play for like mainstream radio to me.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think what's really interesting is if it feels like a continuation of rather than an evolution of the sound that they had on Glow On. And I think that what's making me think that more than anything is kind of it's going to be the first track off of the album in the same way that the song Mystery is on Glow On. And both of those songs are very start with these big kind of synth intros. And actually, if you listen to it, Never Enough follows a very similar pattern, both like drum pattern. The chords aren't the same, but it's following the same rhythmic changes of those chords. And so I don't know, maybe I'm being optimistic, but part of me is like, oh, if they're going to kind of commit to it as an actual stylistic decision, as like, and it's called Never Enough. So if they're actually committing to the idea of, I guess not a sequel album, but like how far can we, what more can we do in this style? And we want to try and like create almost like a mirror to the first album, then I think it's kind of cool, even if I don't necessarily, from what I've heard so far, like the song's cool. I'm not necessarily like aching to hear it and replay it. But if hopefully what I'm kind of thinking is right and it's in service of this idea of exploring that sound further, I think it could be cool. But I agree, I would like hopefully the rest of the album has a bit of a harsher guitar sound.
Yeah, because I feel like that song on the last album, when the guitars kick in, they're like really chunky and like
Yeah, it
you,
slaps you in
feel
the
them.
face.
Totally. And this one they sit more, I guess, more naturally in the mix. Like they don't seem as much of a dynamic shift when they do
Yeah,
kick in.
agreed.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think it's a bad song or anything, but it didn't really um catch my attention, you know? It's
Mhm.
like it's fully fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely anticipating it quite a lot. I really love Glow On as an album, and I think it's a cool. There's a lot of naysayers of Turnstile because the typical thing of they got mainstream from a hardcore sound, but they've never really changed. They've never not had that kind of softer melodic edge to what they do. I always think that his vocals, sleeping on the forgetting the guy's name, but his vocals really remind me of like a Jane's Addiction, like Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction, where he's got that like delay. He's got that upper vocal register, but also that delay going all the time. And I think that's just like a really cool sound to have in the whole hardcore thing.
Yeah, I agree. I guess it's like, how could they evolve otherwise, you know? It's
Hmm.
like it feels like the only way to sort of like evolve that sound is to sort of make it more digestible,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
So
and that
I'm not surprised that this is sort of like, but also, I mean, it's one song off the album, so who knows?
yeah, it could the rest of it could feel like, proper basement stripped back. It could all be like a rug pull, and then the rest of it is horrendous and sounds like like it was recorded on a 4 track with no overdubs and just straight to tape. But we'll find out. We'll find out in June. And I
I
think that
guess,
leads us like actually as is quite a good segue into our main topic of conversation today, talking about bands evolving their sounds between albums and also jokingly we're talking about going like in a rough direction, but this album certainly does. Wanted to obviously get you on to talk about Spoon and their album Transference because it came up organically more than a couple of times over the last few episodes that we did. And yeah, I think it's an album that we both share a lot of love for. Um, I believe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe you said Transference was your favorite Spoon album.
yeah, I think it is. Um, I think it's the one that I find the most like intriguing. Like it
Hmm.
feels like it still has sort of like um nuances to discover, you know, every time I listen to it. Not to say that the rest of their albums don't,
Hmm.
um, but the albums sort of like leading up to this one, the production sort of gets better and better and better and more sort of like straightforward. I feel
Hmm.
there are like cool touches uh, on all of the albums leading up to this one, but there's just like this album production wise is really just bizarre and like just has just some really strange choices, which I find charming, and other people might find maybe amateurish or like off-putting, perhaps, especially after coming from ga 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 or however many ga's are in there. Uh,
I think you did just the right amount of cars.
I practiced before to get it right. But yeah, because ga 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 is like so well produced and so it's like their zenith for sort of like radio rock kind of like, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and I think they achieved what they were setting out to do with that. That's probably their highest selling album. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And
Yep.
has like the hits on it, you know, um, that you still hear like in cafes and shit every once in a while.
Yeah,
But yeah,
totally.
yeah, I just find that this is the one that I delve back into if I want to like do some headphone listening or something, because there's always like something I always catch like something different that seems like a fuck up, but they're very clearly intentionally sort of like making these choices, you know?
Yeah,
Things that could have been remedied very easily, but are left in the mix, like vocal parts just sort of like cutting off.
mhm.
A lot of, maybe not a lot, but at least a few of the songs will sort of like be sort of like building towards the end, and you think they're coming to a crescendo of some sort, and then they just stop. They just cut it off like midway through a verse or something, you know?
Yeah,
It's
there is. I think there's one song that literally ends and it sounds like Britt Daniel is about to like sing or start another verse, and it's like, and then it just that's the end.
yeah, it's great. I really appreciate it. I don't know if these songs would be as interesting to me if they had a more straightforward sort of production style, because they're all none of them are like particularly complex as songs. You know, they
Mm.
each one of them has maybe two to three parts that
Mhm.
kind of like throughout the production, little bits and pieces are added or subtracted to sort of like make the arrangement interesting, but they aren't particularly like overly written songs, you know? A lot of
Yeah,
them feel like raw, sort of like let's not overthink this stuff.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I would agree with pretty much everything that you said. I think I was listening to it a bunch today, and it's just like, man, I just love some of the sounds on the album. Like the kind of buzzy, weird organ kind of sound that opens the record on Before Destruction. The whatever the hell that drum sound is on Is Love Forever, which
Yes.
like I vividly remember hearing that the first time, and it just was a huge hook for me because I just didn't. It just seems so, like you said, like why, like almost like a joke, like it was included for a laugh, but it's like it's in there for the whole thing. But it actually just gives it so much character and so much. It's just so unique.
Yeah, it's like it's so the snare on a few of the songs has like I don't know how they achieve it, but it sounds really sort of like flabby and
Mhm.
like it has like a weird like backwards phaser or something on it.
Yeah,
It's yeah, it's got such a weird yeah, just it's a weird sounding album, you know?
definitely. Was your to step back a little bit, but what was your introduction to Spoon as a band?
I think I think um catching the video for I Turn My Camera On was the
Okay.
first I had sort of like encountered them. Um, we had, I think we maybe touched on this before, but in Canada, the like MTV equivalent was Much Music,
Yep.
and I can't remember the name of the show that was like the indie alternative show, and they would just have like a block for like an hour of like new sort of like indie videos, and I just happened to catch that, and I turned my camera on, was on there, and I was like, damn, this is a fucking cool song. Like, and I don't know that I'd really heard much like that before. Just like
Yeah.
really sparse. And yeah, his like falsetto throughout that is like really cool. Um, it's not really indicative of the album it comes from.
No.
Like, yeah, and I think initially I was a little disappointed by that, but I really grew to enjoy Gimme Fiction quite a bit as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you on I turn my camera on. Like it's completely different to Transference, but it is an equally unique sound, and they achieve it in that instance by being there's this kind of like sparseness to it, like you said, it's kind of empty, but the sounds they have captured are really clean and kind of like yeah, feel kind of like sophisticated. But then that's really nicely counterbalanced, which a lot of Spoon stuff is by Britt Daniels, like really unique voice. He's got one of my favorite voices, I think, in in rock music, just for that kind of like kind of weird fry into falsetto, and then mixed with he has like a unique way of pronouncing certain words or phrases and stuff like that, and just all of that comes together amazingly on that particular track. um and yeah, I guess it's really cool that they have these moments in the discography that can be so different but also so similar in that. If you were going to ask how I got into them, I was going to say I missed out on that song or that album. It was how did I get into it? It was Transference. It was this album. It wasn't a
Oh, okay.
song. It was again, and we probably referenced this before, but like the records forum, um, that uh, spanning from that band that I talk about all the time that I'm making a conscious effort not to reference in this particular episode. But yeah, it was in like a thread that where people would just chuck out new bands, and kind of similarly to what we were talking about with Mclusky. By that point, what was this 2010? I'd heard Spoon the band referenced. So I was like, oh, I'll give this a look. And obviously, in hindsight, it's kind of funny because it sounds like nothing else in their discography, but I just took it kind of on face value. And maybe that's why it kind of went down so easy for me compared to maybe some fans that were like a bit put off by it.
What do you or do you have like a favorite Spoon album or project or?
It would be a toss up, and I will have to say that there's patches of the band's catalog that I don't know. So I don't really know much before Gimme Fiction. And apart from like little bits where I've gone into it. But I would say ones that I go back to, probably it's between three of them, which is Transference. I do think They Want My Soul is great. And I really, really loved the last record they did, Lucifer on the Sofa.
Hmm.
Um,
I,
yeah.
I haven't fully warmed up to that one yet. I don't think it's bad by any means, but I find myself not sort of like drawn to sort of like compulsively listening to it till I have absorbed it, like I have pretty much all their other albums,
Yeah.
aside from first the first one, A Series of Sneaks. I'm not that one never really made a huge impression on me, but that's kind of like um, it's kind of a disowned album in their catalog, even by them, I think.
They've had a really interesting career in that regard, though, haven't they? Because they were really, there's a kind of story of a band that is nice to hear of sometimes, of a band that just like couldn't catch a break for the longest possible time and just continued to push. And I think they were signed to Elektra at one point, had a couple of albums on there, then got dropped, and then it was kind of I guess that would be a huge turning point for most bands where that's the crossroads in which you go, right, okay, maybe it's time to pack it in, but they push forward nonetheless. And I think what makes Transference really interesting is that it similar to what we were talking about with Monomania in the Deer Hunter story, is like they just kind of reached this breakthrough point with Ga Ga Ga, And like you said, I think had sold a lot of albums. You know, it's kind of reaching some of those mainstream radio elements. I remember like movie. There's, I think I probably unknowingly heard Spoon from the movie I Love You Man, because I think like two of their songs are used in that, or at least a few Judd Apatow comedies use their songs. And then so that it's this band that spent the last 15 years like fighting obscurity, fighting like all of the kind of worst elements of trying to make it in the music business, and then they go, ah, we'll just make whatever the hell Transference is. Like it's I mean, amazing. Again, I love any band that takes a swing like that, but I feel like part of them surely must have been like, guys, should we not just like really make another hit record just to cement us before we kind of go and do a left turn?
Yeah, what I appreciate, or one of the many things I appreciate about Spoon, is that each record kind of has its own identity, I guess. And they're always doing like iterations on their sound, you know?
Mm.
Like no two records sound the same, but they're still very Spoon.
Yep.
So I don't know. I imagine they just kind of realized that they could either continue to push for that polish and like, or maybe when they were writing these new songs, they were like, these don't sort of feel like they require that. They require a different sort of like approach, which obviously they took. And I don't think, I mean, for an indie band, it's like, how much bigger could they have gotten, really? They're not going to end up being like the Arctic Monkeys or something, you know? That's probably what the last big guitar band,
Yeah,
you know?
right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I guess, and maybe around that time, another comparison would be maybe the Black Keys. Like
Mm,
they're not like they've not they've not got that their sound isn't easy to latch onto. They happen to make great songs that have a pop appeal, but in terms of like a sound, like Black Keys have like the whole blues rock pentatonic scale, catchy riffs, blah blah blah, ripped off from a million other artists, but it works. And Arctic
mhm,
Monkeys kind of, at least from AM onwards, kind of did a similar thing and had a bit of like a their whole vibe. Um, but if you were to ask just like the average person on the street who might like the Underdog, for instance, they probably
mhm,
would have a hard time describing Spoon's sound actually without being like, oh, it's kind of like Stonesy, but also, Elvis Costello-y. Like
mhm.
their sound is maybe a little bit, I don't want to use the word sophisticated, but not easy, not it's not pitch enough. It's not like got a thing, an angle that you can market or sell, unless they're really in their bag with the songwriting that just happens to connect with people. Um, well, I think it's interesting because I read up on it. I read up on some of the interviews just before we were speaking, and what you said is almost kind of right in the sense of when kind of asking the band, like both at the time and since, why they went down that route. They basically had said that I think the four albums preceding Transference up to Ga 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 had all been produced by the same guy, Mark something, um, and Britt Daniel literally said, we kind of, even though we'd reached this success, we just didn't know where else we could go with that sound, and it was always important that they did something else. And so um, they actually approached Mark Ronson to produce Transference, which feels bizarre considering the direction they would take, and Mark Ronson being like the biggest pop producer in the world. It almost feels like there's an alternate timeline where Transference might have had a different sound to what they were doing before, but ultimately did go in that kind of like double down on the pop side of things. I can't imagine how any of the songs would have sounded with that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a really interesting record to compare against, you know? Like if such a thing ever ended up existing, or even if they did any like demos or anything with him. I bet that that's like really interesting to contrast. But yeah, I I guess I'm just so bought in on the production being almost like more interesting than the songs on this album
Yeah.
that I don't know what like a different production would sound like with these songs because it's so much of the character.
I think it would have, to your point, I think a pop producer would have come in and it would have been a lot of reworking of arrangements because you wouldn't have had all of those quirks. If you took all of those out, like you said, the songs probably need something else to work as in a successful kind of pop structure. What I found interesting is that the reason the album sounds so weird is that like a bunch of the songs are just the demo versions. They decided not to re-record some stuff. Some tracks start with the demo and then they recorded over the top of it, but certain things are just kind of how they did the original thing and left it at that. And I kind of love that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, because I think Trouble Comes Running is like the original demo, I think.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I don't even need to say it. It's mixed really weird, you
Yeah.
know? And I guess they sort of considered that if there was a hit on the album, that was the one.
Mhm.
And it's like they just decided to use this funky demo on the record. Yeah, go for it. And then
Maybe, yeah. Go on.
the beginning of Before Destruction, where Brit's voice is just like in the room, you know? It sounds so far back in the mix.
Mhm.
And it's very clearly just sort of like a demo of him at the piano or whatever. And it just sounds so cool. It lends it so much atmosphere.
Yeah. And it would be really interesting to see, you know, if you did take Trouble Comes Running and make it produced, how much would you have lost? And it's a bit of a trope to hear if you're a music fan, you would have at some point heard an artist say in an interview, like, oh, you re-record the demo and it doesn't have the magic of the first thing. But like, even just in the like very, very amateur way that I've recorded stuff before. And there was one instant, like I've recorded some demos before and then went into a studio to record it and paid for some studio time. And I still find myself kind of listening to some of the demo versions just because I was like, that something about the shitty way that I recorded it and probably the shitty way that I played it. Like it just worked for that particular thing. And it's hard to know whether that's just your own familiarity with it, but there is certainly something to a version when you're kind of hashing it out, not thinking about it, and versus one where it's like, okay, we got to get this, like, all right, and something gets lost in that process. I mean, you must have examples of it with Crohn's, I'm sure.
Oh, oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's something to be said for sort of like that first rush of creativity and
Mhm.
sort of like figuring out or maybe the attempt to figure out how the pieces fit versus once you have it figured out or you think you have it figured out and then you record that. But yeah, like that sort of first initial rush of trying to figure out what does a song sound like? How should
Mhm.
it sound? What's the cadence of the voice over the chords or the riff or whatever, you know? Like sometimes the initial ideas that are kind of naive or unsure can have a lot of charm. And then when you go and polish something up in a more like finished way, it just doesn't have sort of like that same excitement.
Yeah, agreed. Also, there's with, you get things like artifacts when you record badly that, I mean, sometimes it can be terrible, but I remember one thing I did once where I recorded something and then in the chorus, I don't know whether it was like I'd overdubbed too many guitars because that's one way to make a shitty player like me sound good is you just record a bunch of the guitars. but whatever it was, however I did that, some sort of artifact got into the recording and made this kind of like tonal noise during the chord, like during a chord change. It was probably just like an amplified version of like my fingers scraping on the screen string or whatever. But it sounded really good. It almost became like a hook of that particular like track, and I could never in a million years replicate it. Like it was just this perfect thing of like the mistake that I'd made, the weak, like the stupid, ridiculous number of effects that I'd like chained, and you know, it's just a mistake that happened, but it happened to sound good. And those are the things you lose when you go and try and create something to like radio play standard, I think. And it's great that they found a way, I think, to capture that, and maybe things like the vocals cutting off at certain points, and like that weird drum in His Love Together, like Forever. Those could be examples of that. They might not be, but that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it feels like a conscious sort of like decision to push back against what like professional music sounds like, you know? And I don't know, does it add sort of like a more like human element to it to like keep these things in and sort of like shine a spotlight on sort of like what might be considered mistakes, you know? Yeah. I don't know. It's just a really cool it's just a really cool sound. And I don't know that I know many other records that have taken swings with the production in this sort of realm, you know? It's like, I guess we've kind of talked about a couple others that for me are kind of in the same realm, like big, sort of like ugly, dirty productions like that Deer Hunter album. But yeah, I don't know that they would consider that sort of like shining a light on the mistakes in the recording process as much as
Yeah,
I feel like
that feels like consciously dirtying everything up, right? Versus, yeah.
yeah, like maximalism in like the ugliness of it
Hmm.
versus this album, which is sort of, yeah, like making weird decisions and just like letting them lie.
Yeah, totally. It's it, yeah, I think it's hard to think of it unless you start going down the route of like actual lo-fi stuff where that is the style.
Hmm.
It's hard to find something that's kind of like in that world of no, this is we're not like a lo-fi band. We're like a commercially viable rock band, but we've just created this weird noise.
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool. It was such a cool move for them to make. And yeah, I feel like having I've probably listened to this album maybe 10 times over the last week just to sort of refamiliarize myself with it. And yeah, every time I listen to it, there's another little detail that I catch and I'm like, oh, what? Like you
Yeah,
shouldn't have done this, but I'm glad you did.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the fun talking of mistakes, this must have been corrected, but with when I first got the record, I subscribe. I think I still do because this is still in my music library. iTunes Match, which was their service where basically like if you had ripped CDs onto your iTunes account, it would basically match it with stuff that's in the cloud, so it can be all on all of your devices. It's kind of somewhat um irrelevant now that we have streaming, but in that weird time before streaming was fully a thing and you had iTunes, like that was the thing. And anyway, I ripped and there's a version that's still in my library is the one I ripped from the CD, and someone had fucked up the metadata on the CD because is love forever is spelled it's love forever,
Oh,
like IT. So like every time it comes up, I'm always reminded of this like dumb spelling mistake, and then you hear that kind of like super bonehead dumb drum thing, and you're like, it's just perfect. It's like the perfect, little mistake to add to the whole kind of stack of them.
yeah,
I,
it's I wonder, I mean, obviously they're not I'm sure that was a genuine mistake.
I think so. I think that was like an all thumbs
Yeah.
person. typing on the keyboard, but it was just seemed like the perfect icing on the cake. Do you have a favorite track on the record?
Hmm, I like Mystery Zone a lot. I like the idea of it, like what the lyrics are talking about. It's yeah, it's a cool idea, I think. The what everyone else is doing when you're not around. That's sort
Mhm.
of like the mystery zone of life, and that there's adventure to be found in like pushing into those margins uh, in your own life, like going and doing something that people wouldn't expect.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd never actually never given much thought to the lyrics, but I love that like theme running through it. And I was also going to say the same track.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I think the bounce to the guitar is like it's just I love, and that's an underrated part of Britt Daniels playing. I think is he's got like a really cool attack on his guitar and a great tone, but they come together in this perfect way. And on that track, like the guitars really bounce in a cool way, and I just love that bass line where it's just it's all in like the strumming or picking pattern because it's like pretty much one note that boom, but it's like kind of off. And yeah, it's great. I think that is probably one of the highlights, and that's one where it ends as he's about to say something, doesn't it? It's like and then it ends.
I think it happens a couple times in that song. There's one point where it feels like he's going to go into the mystery zone part again, like
Yeah, it
which I
just
guess,
nails it.
and it just like cuts it off at the M,
Yeah,
and it's man, what it I don't know why you did it, but it totally works and it's
yeah,
totally fun. Yeah.
it's so cool. I think if I was going to say another one just for variety, um, I really like Outgo the Lights because of uh Brit's vocal performance in that. Like it's got a great when he like really gets into the kind of like gravelly bit and like feels and emotes with that thing. It's just like a really like hairs on the back of the neck part, but it also has his kind of like weird wailing harmonizing in the background. And I think like that's a really cool tune as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a song on the album that I don't like. I think
No,
they all could potentially be someone's favorite song on the album.
the only thing I will say, and I think this is an interesting thing, is that today I became aware of how little I've listened to the track that was like hidden at the end of the album, which is like Red Spider something. I'm just trying to find it
Oh,
on my thing.
Mean Red Spider?
Mean Red Spider, yeah, because and I was gonna say like I
Is
wonder
that like
whether the
a or,
well it was the last track is like 12 minutes long. So um
hmm.
Nobody Gets Me But You is like 12 minutes long. And I wonder whether it's because that was like the last track that's buried, but in the digital version, it's been cut into its own thing.
Interesting. Because in at least in Canada, the digital version just ends with nobody gets me but you. And
Really? And it
yeah,
doesn't have
and
like a long bit of silence.
no,
That's weird. My version's
yeah,
like 12 minutes long, but
no,
most of it's
mine's
silent.
mine's like five-ish, I guess. Because Mean Red
Odd.
Spider, at least for streaming here in Canada, is it's like a standalone single kind of thing.
Oh, really? Well, maybe it is then. Okay, maybe my um Apple Music just started like playing stuff because I've literally gone back onto the album and it's not listed. But I was again wondering why I got to the end of the record and I was just not hearing anything when I was out like walking around. Um, and so maybe that's another weird artifact of this CD version that I have that has this like spelling mistake on on the track name and also just a bunch of dead air at the end of the song.
Maybe, yeah, maybe there was a bonus track on the CD or something,
Weird.
or
I've
a
got
hit.
it somewhere. I buried all of my CDs. Well, not buried. They're in the loft at my parents' house, which I daren't ask because I'll be made to take them home, and I just do not want to have like take the room. So just pretend that they're not there.
You'll get to them when you get to them.
Exactly. Are you Have you ever seen Spoon live?
I haven't. I would love to at some
I
point.
think I've only seen Spoon the once, but it was in shortly after They Want My Soul,
Hmm.
and it was a great show. But I had a running joke with my friend who I went to see it with that their drummer had like maybe he'd booked another show afterwards because he was like starting every song like before Brick could even say anything. And it was like, and he was the first one off at the end of the show. So it's like he obviously had places to be. He needed to be somewhere else.
Maybe he had diarrhea.
Hey, those tours can be long, and I heard, any possible illness can definitely come up.
Yeah, the food's not great. Who did they play with when you saw them? Do you remember?
Don't remember. I don't. I think that was a show where I ended up spending a bit too much time in the pub before, and then was like,
Mhm.
"Oh shit, we're actually here to see a band. Let's go."
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I remember them coming on like as I got in there. But I'd love to see them again. Oh, I tell you what, I saw them another time, which is much cooler. There's a club in right in the center of London on Tottenham Court Road called the 100 Club, which is really, really small. And there's like a lot of like history behind it. And it's strangely survived like the overwhelming kind of like corporate renovation, gentrificate. Well, that area's always been like, it doesn't need to be gentrified, but for whatever reason, corporations haven't got their mitts into it. It still exists. And I saw Spoon there right around the release of Hot Thoughts, which is kind of my least favorite album. I didn't dig that one really at all, but it was a really cool show. And I remember it well because on the way out, and this will mean maybe will mean nothing to you, but Louis Theroux was behind me in the audience.
Okay. That I know the name, but why do I know it?
He's like a documentarian, and he's kind of famous for a lot of he used to do a lot of documentaries in the 90s and early 2000s where he would go and like stay with the Ku Klux Klan for a week or go and like st go and hang out with like porn directors for a week, and he kind of has this very like inquisitive but also kind of like comedic satirical way of interviewing people that was quite funny up against like sometimes like either very weird or like very bad people like you
Hmm.
know but yeah, he's kind of a bit of a national treasure in the UK, and it was funny that like I was walking out, I was like, oh shit, that's Louis Theroux. I was just enjoying Spoon together.
That's what he does to wind down after hanging out with the Ku Klux Klan, eh? He
I
goes
think
to a spoon.
so. What
That's
better
awesome.
way?
I
Yeah,
love that for you.
no, no, that was it was a cool show. I was going to say I want to put a thought out for what we could do as a follow up to this, and it's related, but I feel like we should cover the Divine Fits record
Yeah, let's do it.
because, like, chronologically, it's actually like basically the next thing that Britt Daniel did after this, and that is another overlooked record, I think.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. Um, Dan Bachner is really cool too. Like I like
Mm.
his quite a bit.
Yeah, I need to get you need to school me on him because I remember I've only recently listened to his most recent solo album, which was kind of okay, kind of whatever. But other than that, Divine Fits is the only kind of vessel that I've heard of from him.
Well, he was in Wolf Parade or is in Wolf Parade as well.
Hmm.
Um, he's got a band called uh, Handsome Furs,
Yeah,
which are sort of like a two-piece sort of like electronic rock band with his partner at the time. I think they did three records, two of which are really good, and one of which is okay.
hmm
Uh, then he had another electronic sort of leaning band called Operators. Um, and their first EP I found really enjoyable. And then I think they had two albums after that, neither of which were like super great to me. He also is now in Arcade Fire. He's sort of like
Oh,
replaced. Uh, he replaced Win Butler, I think his name is, whichever brother left.
Oh,
Uh,
Will Butler. I think
yeah,
Win is the front
the
man,
main
right?
guy. Yeah, so I think he came in on guitar when that happened. Uh, yeah, and I think there's even a connection to where I live with him. I think his dad lives here or something. I
Oh,
like,
no way.
or some guy came into the record store to talk to me one day and just lied about being his dad. I don't know why you would do that.
That's a niche reference, but hey,
Yeah,
it takes
it's
all sorts, especially in record stores.
hmm yeah. It's like I could check out. Sure, I'll believe you.
I choose to believe. I think that always makes for a more interesting story.
Yeah, totally. I'm not going to check you on this. How can I?
Now he needs to come back with birth certificates.
Yeah, yeah. I asked him to, and I never saw him again. So
Cool, man. Well, thanks for this. It was really good to chat over what could be, I'm gonna say my favorite Spoon album, even if that might change by the time I listen to They Want My Soul, but it's certainly up there. It's a great album. I hope more people listen to it. Um, and yeah, this was fun. I look forward to chatting about Divine Fits. All right. Thanks again to Nathan. Great chatting about Spoon. Always keen to chat about that album in particular. And yeah, I'm looking forward to when we reconvene. I think we'll have another crack at a Spoon adjacent album that you might enjoy if you like this. Other than that, time to knock it on the head. Do of course subscribe to the newsletter, which I mentioned before. Again, I'll send you a private playlist that sends you a free print. And yeah, if you can be asked to do that, you may as well subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. Stick around, share some thoughts, show some love, have some abuse in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, mate. Bye.